Thank you very, very much for inviting me to participate in this conference. I would really like to have been there in person, but unfortunately, it has to work out this way. Nonetheless, we're going to try to give you a short update of the work that's being done at the FDA Center for Devices and Radiologic Health, which we refer to as Cdrh. We're going to start by looking back at where we were about 10 years ago, when most innovative medical device developers in the United States went to Europe or other offshore locations. Most innovative medical device developers went outside of the US to develop their devices and only brought them into the United States an average of 4 to 5 years later, if at all, in some cases, thus depriving people in the US of the opportunity to receive true cutting-edge medical care. But before we get started, I'd like to emphasize that while we are regulators of medical devices and medical device products, our center is primarily a public health agency, and that regulation is only the process by which we attempt to achieve our overarching goal of improving the health of people in the US. So rather than medical devices being at the heart of what we do, patients are at the heart of what we do. And so as to emphasize that commitment, our vision begins with the word patients. In 2012, Cdrh committed to a new vision for FDA, that patients in the US would have access to high quality, safe and effective medical devices of public health importance first in the world. It's not first in the world as a competition, but it was first in the world as an aspirational goal. And of course, it was a measurable metric that we could count and see how we were working out for that goal. We knew that timely access to technologies that benefit patients was key to successfully meeting our vision. And since 2012, we have carefully crafted our strategic priorities, including customer service, pre-post-market balance, clinical trials, the development of NEST, partnering with patients, and a culture of quality and others to meet this challenge. Between 2012 and 2017, our efforts to reduce the time and cost of generating robust clinical evidence through policies and procedures that facilitate and streamline the development and approval of high-quality clinical research protocols have resulted in Cdrh slashing the median review time for IDE full approvals by more than a year, and an increase in the number of early feasibility clinical trials conducted in the US. Additionally, we focused on a holistic view of evidence generation through the total product lifecycle approach, trying to strike the right balance between pre-market and post-market data collection, and asking for the least burdensome evidence needed to approve or clear a device to enter the market versus what data could be gathered in the post-market or in the real world. We have complemented and advanced our efforts to establish the National Evaluation System for Health Technology, or NEST, and its promise to increase the value and use of evidence from routine clinical practice in the home setting in our regulatory processes, thereby improving our understanding of the real-world benefit-risk profile of marketed devices. And finally, to continuously work to reduce both the time and cost of bringing medical devices to the American people. Over the next 3-year period, 2018 to 2020, we then focused on enhancing and expanding applications of these approaches that we had already started to use. And instead of creating new goals, our only goal was that by the end of 2020, to reverse the paradigm of 10 years earlier, that over half of manufacturers of novel technologies for the US market will intend to bring their devices to the US first. To accomplish this goal, we supported the development of collaborative communities. We stopped doing what was no longer sufficient value added to the public health process to free our Cdrh teams to spend more time on what matters most to patients. We mean by that regulatory simplicity. And maybe most importantly, we focused on our staff success as we recognize that Cdrh cannot be successful unless our employees are fully engaged. And further, we invested in their professional and personal development by providing an environment that helps our people succeed. So how did we do? Some insights can be gleaned from a review of the details from the Cdrh 2021 annual report. This report is intended to provide a high-level summary of the center's programmatic accomplishments from the past year, intended for our stakeholders, the agency, congressional leadership, as well as our Cdrh staff. Many of the successes we featured in the report are a result of cross-functional collaboration across offices and the agency. This report was published on January 31st of this year and is publicly available on our website, and there's a link that you will find on the bottom of this slide when you receive these slides. While there is so much to acknowledge from this past year, I'd like to point out a few highlights from the report. Throughout 2021, our center has been focused on our continued COVID-19 pandemic response and how it has affected Cdrh's workload. For example, since the start of the pandemic, more than 630,000 hours have been spent on a large variety of COVID-19 work, including emergency use, EOA evaluations, and for diagnostic tests and new therapies. This is the equivalent of approximately 20% of our entire workforce working full-time on COVID-related activities for an entire year. And 70 of our commissioned corps officers were deployed 134 times. We continued our collaborative work in support of the development of collaborative communities. The hallmark of a collaborative community is a continuing forum where public and private sector members proactively work together to solve both shared problems and problems unique to other members in an environment of trust and openness. Our goal was to participate in at least 10 collaborative communities by the end of 2020. We reached that goal, and by August of 2021, we exceeded it by participating in the 12 collaborative communities listed on this slide. We anticipate that we will continue to engage with more and more collaborative communities into the future. Next, we continued our commitment to device safety. For example, last year in partnership with ECRI, we published 4 safety summaries regarding materials that are commonly used in implantable medical devices and how they perform in the real world. This is another example of how we're being proactive in addressing the safety aspect for medical devices. Fourth, we continued our commitment to device innovation. For example, last year, even though overwhelmed by COVID-19 work, we granted market authorization to 103 novel devices and granted breakthrough designation to 213. And our innovation team, which I lead, is actively engaging multiple stakeholders with diverse expertise from all over the world to work together to develop novel kidney replacement therapies for people with end-stage kidney failure. We continue to prioritize providing a high level of customer service. In 2020, we realized our goal of 90% customer service satisfaction and remained above 90% throughout 2021 after reaching a peak of 96% in Q2, except for a slight dip at the tail end of 2021 as the pandemic was truly wearing everyone down. So these are just some of the highlights that are featured in this report, and I encourage you to download the report, which is available at our website. And I just remain in awe of the incredible work that this center does and hope that this report brings everyone the same sense of pride that we share with the leadership and all of the staff at Cdrh. Now, as the annual report takes a look back at our work in 2021, our 2022 to 2025 strategic priorities represent our present and looks towards the future of Cdrh. To us at Cdrh, strategic priorities are the ultimate goals for the entire center, and all staff and managers work together in their own ways to achieve these goals. Developing the priorities has been a collaborative process throughout the center, been informed by live polls at our all-hands meeting, surveys, and many internal discussions across the center. We'll start by summarizing the strategic priorities for years 2022 to 2025 and two overarching public metrics of success, or ways to measure how well we meet our commitments to the American people. Then we'll drill down, and for each strategic priority, we'll discuss actions to support them and ways to measure their success. First, about the actions. The actions in the strategic plan are representative and not intended to cover all that we're planning to do. They are intentionally non-prescriptive and allow us to be more innovative in our implementation. Next, the metrics. The strategic priority measures of success are clear and aggressive goals that help measure progress. They are public stretch goals, and again, are not all that we have set for ourselves to accomplish. So let's get started. As we look forward to the future of Cdrh through our 2022-2025 strategic priorities, we intend to 1, promote a modern and diverse workforce, 2, to enhance organizational agility and resilience, and 3, to advance health equity. We'll discuss the priorities and their actions and measures shortly. Along with the 3 strategic priorities, we established 2 overarching metrics of success. First, by December 31st, 2025, more than 50% of the manufacturers of newly authorized novel technologies for the U.S. market brought their devices to the U.S. first, or in parallel with other major markets. And by the end of that time, end of 2025, more than 75% of the time, the FDA will identify and act on significant safety signals related to medical devices marketed in the U.S. and other major markets first, or in coordination with regulatory agencies of other major markets. These overarching program measures of success will assess progress towards our commitment to the American people and that patients have access to high quality, safe and effective medical devices of public health importance, first in the world. Now let's take a closer look at each strategic priority. So to promote a modern and diverse workforce aims to further enhance our incredible workforce so that it is exceedingly proactive, flexible, resilient, collaborative, engaged, and takes full advantage of digital collaboration, technologies, and tools, and acknowledges and includes diverse perspectives, experience, skills, and knowledge. Representative actions under this priority include implementing Cdrh's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging roadmap action plan, continuing to build and enhance employee engagement and wellness programs, and building on our hiring practices, using innovative recruitment practices and expanding our recruitment efforts to broaden the diversity of our workforce. 2 measures will help us track progress. By December 31st, 2025, Cdrh employees across all representative groups will experience a greater sense of fairness and equity as measured by a, quote, very high rating on our inclusion survey that we administer to all our staffs, and that Cdrh will achieve at least 90% of the annual center-wide hiring targets for fiscal years 2023 to 2025. And a modern and diverse workforce must be supported by an organization that is prepared for and can adapt quickly to avoid disrupting the operations of the center and the work-life balance and wellness of the employees. So our next strategic priority is to enhance organizational agility and resilience. This priority is intended to support and create the modern and diverse workforce we aim to be. Enhanced organizational agility and resilience is about being able to adapt or redesign our business processes, approaches, and policies to leapfrog ahead for the needs of tomorrow. Actions under this priority will include using a collaborative center-wide process to determine what work-life balance means to Cdrh employees, as well as to take steps to achieve a work experience that is tailored and meaningful to our workforce. Also, enhancing our professional and personal development programs to foster the success of employees across their career, such as implementation of the Cdrh Careers Experiential Rotation Program. And another action is to significantly expand our efforts on simplicity through incorporation of agile and design thinking. Two measures will help us track progress towards these goals. By the end of 2025, Cdrh will reduce the average amount of time spent on at least 10 core business processes without reducing performance or adversely impacting outcomes. And also, by the end of 2025, more than 90% of Cdrh employees experience a favorable and sustainable work-life balance as predefined through a collaborative center-wide process. So putting patients first is an empty promise if it only applies to some and not all. Our priority on advancing health equity recognizes that Cdrh can advance the development of knowledge and safe and effective technologies to meet the needs of all patients and consumers. Technologies, including digital health technologies, can bridge that divide while advancing better health care, quality of life, and wellness for all, and should be designed and targeted to meet the needs of diverse populations. Actions under this priority include working to, 1, reduce the barriers and increase opportunities for participation by diverse populations in evidence generation, including traditional clinical trials, as well as real-world data studies. Also, to develop a framework for when a device should be evaluated in diverse populations to support marketing authorizations. And finally, partnering with patients, healthcare providers, industry, and payers to advance solutions that promote equity along the total product life cycle, including access to care. Two measures will help us track progress for this goal. By the end of 2025, 95% of publicly available pre-market authorization decision summaries issued since December 31st, the year before, 2024, will include available data stratified by demographic characteristics or include a statement that describes the performance associated with demographic characteristics. And by December 31st, 2025, demonstrate year-over-year improvement from a 2023 baseline measure of consumer understanding of our patient-caregiver communications across diverse demographic groups. So these are our 2022 to 2025 strategic priorities. They have already been released to the public and can be found at our website, as well as what was shown on an earlier slide. And I'm sure that we will be held accountable for success in reaching our goals. As we transition to implementation, we will establish cross-center strategic priority implementation teams. The teams will develop implementation plans, and in addition, as needed, working groups may also be established to support the implementation. As we move forward, we'll be sharing progress with our staff and the public on the actions taken and on performance towards meeting our measures of success. And I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present this information, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
If we have questions, could you please move to the microphone?
Thank you for speaking with us today. I'm very excited to learn about CDHR's 2022 to 2025 strategic priorities. How are you partnering with Native American communities to promote a diverse workforce and to advance health equity?
Well, in all honesty, I'm not the expert on how we're dealing with each individual communities, but I can tell you that we've identified, all of the communities, including American Indian populations. So, we have a specific center within FDA that relates to the Indian Health Service, and we will be engaging that community and probably establish, hopefully, even a collaborative community with the Indian Health Service to be sure that all of these opportunities reach out to all of the diverse populations throughout the country.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions?
And I want to thank you for that question. That's really important.
Hi there, Hi there, Dr. Sheldon. Building on that same question, when teams are submitting their data packages for 510K clearance, how should they account for the FDA's new strategy around equity in populations?
Well, 510K market authorization clearance, as you know, is based on being sure that it is substantially equivalent to a predicate device that is already marketed. And so to the extent that that predicate device is or is not being used in diverse populations, or we don't have any data or follow-up on certain diverse populations, I think it would be really an excellent opportunity in that submission to demonstrate your ability to actually capture new data. Now, as you're aware, 510K submissions generally aren't required to do clinical trials. Again, they're put on the market based on their substantial equivalence with another marketed device. Nonetheless, we sometimes add or suggest some clinical studies to evaluate different aspects of that product as compared to the predicate. In this case, I think it would be very helpful to mention, at least in the submission, at least a plan of how you would look at how that device would interact with diverse populations, and then capture that data and submit it. That would be a really excellent approach, and it would help us and help the country, and as well as the manufacturer of that product.
Thank you so much for that answer. Is there another question? So I have one from online. It seems that health equity is really a hot topic right now. And the question was, as telehealth has been identified as a way to enhance health equity, are you seeing more applications, more technologies that take advantage of that?
Well, we're seeing certainly a large bump in digital health technologies, and a lot of telehealth relates to digital health approaches, although there's a full variety within the digital health. There's software as a medical device, software in a medical device. We're capturing data from medical devices themselves about how the device interacts with the patient in that way. But I'll tell you, there's been a tremendous boom in that the whole areas of telehealth, telemedicine, and digital health technologies. In fact, our center has already established late last year, maybe beginning of this year, a center of excellence with digital technologies. And so we really anticipate that's going to grow substantially over the next few years.
All right. Thank you so much, Murray. It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you very, very much. I hope I can be with you next year in person.